I never believed in haunted houses. Sure, I loved ghost stories when I was a kid, the kind you whisper in the dark with a flashlight under your chin. But those were just stories. I always thought haunted houses were just old places with creaky boards and overactive imaginations. That changed the night I stepped into the Wilkins house. It started as a dare. My friend Tyler and I were drinking on his back porch when he brought it up. The Wilkins house sat at the edge of town, abandoned for decades. Everyone had a theory about it. The family vanished, a murder-suicide, satanic rituals, or worse. Tyler smirked at me over his beer and said, "You wouldn't last an hour in there." I laughed, maybe a little too loud, and told him I could spend the whole night. He grinned and said, "Prove it." So I did. Around 9 that night, I drove down the dirt road until the house appeared, looming out of the tall weeds like a corpse refusing to stay buried. The paint was long gone, the wood gray and splintered, windows black and hollow. When I stepped out of the car, the crickets went silent. The world seemed to hold its breath. The front door groaned as I pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick and sour, a mixture of mold and dust that clung to my throat. My flashlight beam caught peeling wallpaper, rotted floorboards, and a chandelier hanging crookedly from the ceiling. It looked like any other abandoned house, sad and forgotten. But then I heard footsteps upstairs. They weren't the random creaks of wood. They were steady, slow, deliberate. My chest tightened, but I forced myself up the staircase, each step moaning beneath me. At the top, the hallway stretched out, wallpaper shredded like something had clawed at it. My flashlight flickered once, and I froze. When it came back, I thought I saw movement at the far end of the hall, too fast to make out. I whispered, "Hello?" But only silence answered. I followed the sound of the last door, which opened into a child's bedroom. A small bed frame leaned against the wall, the mattress nothing but exposed springs. Toys littered the floor, wooden dolls with blank, burned-in sockets where eyes should have been. Their limbs bent at wrong angles, as if someone had twisted them until they snapped. I picked one up, and that's when I heard it. A giggle, high-pitched, right behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. My light landed on the wall above the bed. Words were carved into the wood, deep and jagged. "Get out." I wanted to. God, I wanted to run. But something compelled me deeper. Down in the kitchen, I found a door leading to the basement. The smell hit me first, rotten, wet, and metallic like spoiled meat. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I descended the damp, slick stairs. The basement walls were lined with shelves. Dozens of jars filled them, floating with things I first thought were vegetables. But as I leaned closer, my stomach turned. Fingers, eyes, a baby's hand, preserved in cloudy liquid. My breath caught in my throat. That's when I heard the whisper. One word, soft and guttural, like it came from the dirt itself. "Stay." In the corner stood a cracked mirror, tall and warped. My reflection looked twisted, stretched at odd angles. And then I realized I wasn't alone in it. A woman stood behind me in the reflection. Her skin was gray and tight, her mouth stretched open in a silent scream, her eyes two black pits. I spun around. The basement was empty. When I turned back to the mirror, she was closer. That was it. I bolted. I ran up the stairs, across the hall, and down to the front door. I grabbed the knob, but it wouldn't turn. It was fused, immovable. Behind me, footsteps began. Slow, heavy, coming closer. I didn't dare look back. I slammed my shoulder against the door until it splintered and burst open. Cold night air hit my face as I sprinted to my car. I fumbled the keys, finally jammed them in, and tore down the dirt road, my heart slamming so hard I thought it would tear itself free. I didn't stop until I got home. I told myself that was it, that I'd never go back, that I'd never even speak of it. But then the nights came, and with them, the sounds. Sometimes faint, sometimes so close they make me freeze in my bed. The giggle of a child, the creak of footsteps. My bathroom mirror fogs even when the shower hasn't run, and word appear in the condensation. Get out. But where am I supposed to go? This is my home. Last night, I woke to find one of those faceless wooden dolls sitting on my nightstand. Its eyeless socket stared at me in the dark. I don't know how it got there. I don't want to know. I see her everywhere now. Reflections in windows, in puddles on the street, in the corner of my vision. Always closer, always waiting. I think the only way to end this is to go back, to face her. So I'm writing this down before I leave, in case I don't return. If this is the last thing anyone finds of me, then at least the truth will survive. The Wilkins house isn't haunted. It's hungry. I never should have gone inside. If I'd listened to that small, gnawing voice in the back of my head, the one that told me to turn around and go home, I wouldn't be writing this now. But I didn't listen. I stepped into that house, and something in there stepped out with me. The house had always been there, though I swear it hid from me most of my life. I grew up only a few blocks away from Alder Street, walking past it on the way to school, biking past it in the summer. And yet, somehow, I never saw it until that night. Not really. It was wedged between two other homes, both lived in and well kept, but the house itself seemed wrong. The roof sagged, weeds curled up its walls, and its windows were blackened, like eyes gouged out. Standing in front of it, I had this dizzying thought that maybe it had just appeared there, slipped into reality when no one was looking. I don't know what compelled me, but I pushed through the overgrown hedges and stepped onto the porch. The boards groaned under my weight, but not in the way old wood should. It sounded like a sigh, like relief. The door wasn't locked. It swung open with a low creak, as though it had been waiting. Inside, the smell hit me first. Damp wood, mildew, and underneath it something sweet and rotten like spoiled fruit. Dust motes swirled in my flashlight beam, drifting through the air like ash. The wallpaper had peeled away in long strips, and the carpet was stiff with decades of grime. Still, it wasn't so different from any other abandoned house I'd seen in movies or pictures online. Empty, forgotten. But the silence was what got me. The world outside, cars, wind, crickets, had gone completely mute. Inside that house, sound just didn't exist. I told myself I'd just take a quick look around and leave. Proof to myself I wasn't afraid. But every step I took seemed to pull me deeper, as if the house itself wanted me to keep going. I wandered through a living room where furniture sat draped in yellowed sheets, their outlines bulging like bodies under shrouds. A dining room where a long table was set with dusty plates, as if dinner had been abandoned mid-bite. In the kitchen, I found a cracked teacup on the counter, filled with something black and dried. Then I saw the stairs. They rose into darkness, steep and narrow, each step sagging with age. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, but my legs moved anyway. With each step I took, the boards groaned beneath me, and I swear the sound echoed, not upwards but deeper, like the house had a hollow core. At the top of the stairs was a hallway. My flashlight beam slid over torn wallpaper, doors hanging crookedly on their hinges, and at the very end, a door that stood slightly ajar. It opened as I approached. The room was a bedroom, a child's bedroom. The bed sat neatly made, though the mattress sagged in the middle. A rocking chair faced a window, gently moving back and forth, though the air was dead still. I should have turned back then. I should have run. But my eyes drifted to the walls. They were covered in photographs, dozens of them. At first, I thought they were old family portraits. But as I stepped closer, my stomach lurched. They weren't strangers. They were of me, Photos of me standing on the porch, me stepping into the living room, me climbing the stairs, me reaching for the bedroom door. The most recent one, the one at the very center, showed me standing in the room at that exact moment, flashlight in hand, eyes wide with shock. My pulse thundered in my ears. I spun around. The room was empty, except the rocking chair wasn't empty anymore. Someone sat there. No, not someone. Me. It was my face, my body, but pale, hollow-eyed, smiling with a mouth that didn't look like mine. My double tilted its head slowly, watching me with that stretched grin. And in a voice that scraped like rusted nails, it whispered, "I've been waiting to come home." The flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. I stumbled back, my heart slamming so hard I thought my ribs might crack. When the beam rolled across the room, the chair was empty again. I ran, down the stairs, through the living room, out the front door. I didn't stop until I was halfway down the block, gasping for breath. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my car. But when I finally looked up, I was standing in front of the house again. The weeds, the porch, the yawning black windows. My car sat in the driveway, right where I'd left it. I blinked, turned, ran down the street. But no matter how many turns I took, I ended up back on Alder Street. The house wouldn't let me leave. I don't know how I eventually made it home. My memories blur, running, screaming, stumbling into darkness. The next thing I remember clearly is waking up in my own bed, drenched in sweat. For a moment I convinced myself it had been a nightmare, until I saw the photograph on my nightstand. It was me, lying in bed, fast asleep. Since then, more photographs keep appearing. On my kitchen counter, on my bathroom sink, tucked inside my coat pocket. Always of me. Always from angles I couldn't possibly reach myself. Last night, I woke to find a new one pinned to my bedroom door. This time, it wasn't just me in the picture. It was me and my double, the thing from the rocking chair, standing behind me in the photo, smiling. I don't sleep anymore. I don't go out after dark. I can feel the house pulling at me, tugging at the edges of my mind. And I know sooner or later I'll end up back there, on Alder Street. When I do, I don't think I'll be the one who walks back out. When I bought this house, the realtor told me it was a fixer-upper. She mentioned the peeling wallpaper, the squeaky floors, the leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom. She never mentioned the attic. It wasn't on the blueprints, not in the documents, not even in the inspection report. For all intents and purposes, the house wasn't supposed to have one. I only discovered it a week after moving in, when I woke in the middle of the night to a sound above me, something dragging across the ceiling. At first I thought it was rats, or maybe raccoons. But the noise was too heavy, too deliberate, as if someone were hauling something large from one end of the house to the other. The next morning, I searched until I found the hatch. It was hidden behind a false wall in the closet of the guest bedroom, a square panel of wood with a small metal ring. I hesitated, hand hovering over it. I don't know why. Maybe because the dragging sound had gone quiet the moment I entered the closet, as though whatever had been moving above me was now listening. Still, curiosity won. I pulled the hatch open. Darkness yawned above me. There was no ladder, no stairs, nothing but an opening into blackness. I stacked a couple boxes, climbed up, and pulled myself inside. The first thing I noticed was the size. The attic was too big, much too big. From the outside, the house was modest, a two-bedroom with a small yard. But the attic stretched far beyond the walls, beams disappearing into endless shadows. The air was stale, suffocating, as though it hadn't been disturbed in decades. I swept my flashlight around. The beam fell on objects scattered across the floor. Children's shoes, old suitcases, a cracked porcelain doll, a broken radio. They were arranged haphazardly, as if dropped there and forgotten. Then the lights came on. Not light bulbs, but lanterns, one by one, flickering to life overhead. Their glow spread across the attic, revealing more objects. Hundreds of them. Rusted bicycles, stuffed animals, torn photographs. I stood frozen, staring. I hadn't touched anything. I hadn't flipped a switch. The lanterns simply lit themselves, as if to say, "Look, see what we've collected." And then I noticed a table. It stood at the far end of the attic, under the glow of the last lantern. Upon it sat a neat row of teeth, human teeth, some large, some small, arranged as carefully as silverware. Beside them lay a Polaroid camera. I staggered backward, bile rising in my throat. My flashlight slipped from my grip, clattering to the floor, and that's when I heard it again. The dragging, slow, deliberate, scraping across the boards, coming from the shadows beyond the lanterns. My skin crawled, every instinct screaming to run. I scrambled down to the hatch, slammed it shut, and shoved the dresser against the wall. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the living room, listening. The dragging continued above me, circling, searching. The next morning, I told myself I'd imagined it. Stress, lack of sleep, moving into a new place always messes with your head, right? But when I went upstairs, the dresser I'd shoved in front of the closet had been pushed aside. The hatch was open, and there was a Polaroid on my bed. It was me, standing in the attic, staring at the table of teeth. After that, things got worse. Every night, the lanterns flicker on above me. I don't go up there anymore, but I can see the faint glow seeping through the cracks of the ceiling. And with the light comes the dragging, closer each time, until it stops directly above my bedroom. I started locking the closet door. I even nailed it shut. But still, the photographs appear. Me brushing my teeth, me cooking dinner, me sleeping, always from an angle just behind me, like someone was there with a camera. Last night, I woke to find a new Polaroid on my pillow. This one was different. It wasn't just me in the photo. Something stood in the background, tall, hunched, its limbs too long, its head bowed as though it couldn't fit under the ceiling. Its skin looked wrong, too pale, too stretched, almost translucent. In its hand, it held the Polaroid camera, and it was smiling. I don't know what to do. Leaving is an option. I've tried. I packed my things, drove away, but every road led me back here, back to this house, back to the attic. Tonight, the dragging hasn't stopped. It's been circling for hours, faster, heavier. Dust drifts down from the ceiling, and I can see the hatch trembling in the closet. I think it's coming down. If anyone finds this, don't come looking for me. Don't step foot in this house. And for the love of God, don't look in the attic. I moved into the house on Merrill Lane because it was cheap. That's the first thing you need to understand. It wasn't just cheap, it was absurdly cheap. Like the kind of deal that makes you suspicious, but also greedy enough to ignore the warning signs. The realtor called it a fixer-upper, but really it just needed love. That's what she said. Love. Like it was some stray animal I could feed and shelter until it wagged its tail at me. I almost laughed at the idea, but I nodded and signed the papers. The first week was uneventful. Dusty floors, a few broken boards, and the occasional draft whispering through the hallways. It was quiet. Too quiet for a house in a neighborhood. No kids laughing outside. No cars rumbling past. At night, I would stand on the porch and realize I couldn't hear anything at all, like the entire block had been abandoned. I noticed a window on the second night. It was at the end of the upstairs hallway, half hidden behind a faded curtain. It shouldn't have been there. From the outside, that part of the house had no protrusions, no architectural quirks that would suggest an opening. But inside, the window stared back at me, large and rectangular, its glass darkened as though it looked into nothing. At first, I thought maybe it was a trick of the layout, or maybe some kind of boarded-up extension. I didn't pull the curtain aside. Something about the window felt wrong, the kind of wrong you can't explain logically, only in your gut. On the third night, I woke to the sound of tapping. It was soft at first, like rain against the glass, but there was no rain. I sat up in bed listening and realized it was coming from the hallway. My heart slowed, then quickened again. Tap, 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 like long fingernails clicking against the pane. I told myself it was a house settling or maybe a tree branch. I forced myself back under the covers and shut my eyes. The next morning, I checked outside. Nothing. No tree branches, no sign of anything that could have made the sound. I avoided the window that day, but the more I ignored it, the heavier the air in the hallway felt, as though the entire house were leaning toward that one spot. By the end of the week, the tapping grew louder. It came at the same time each night, around 2:13 a.m. I don't know why I looked at the clock, but I always did. Tap, tap, tap. Sometimes slow, sometimes fast, like whoever or whatever was on the other side was desperate to get in. I couldn't take it anymore. On the seventh night, I got up, crept into the hallway, and ripped the curtain aside. The window didn't look outside. It didn't look anywhere I could recognize. Instead, I saw a hallway just like mine, same wallpaper, same wooden floor, but darker, rotting, as if it had been abandoned for centuries. The walls sagged, the boards were black with mold, and the air on the other side shimmered, as if it were underwater. And then I saw a movement. A figure stepped into view. At first, it looked like me. Same height, same hair, same clothes I was wearing. My breath caught in my throat. It stared at me with dead, pale eyes, and then it smiled, wide and unnatural, splitting its face into something grotesque. It raised a hand and tapped. Tap, tap, tap. I stumbled back, nearly falling to the floor. The figure tilted its head, watching me, its smile never breaking. Then, without moving its lips, I heard it speak. Let me in. The voice came from inside my head, thick and cold, like ice sliding down my spine. I slammed the curtain shut and ran back to my bedroom, heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The days after that blurred together. I stopped eating, stopped going to work. All I could think about was the window. I could feel it calling to me, humming like a low vibration through the walls. On the 10th night, I woke to find the curtain gone, torn away. The window was wide open, its glass gone, the frame bare. The air was freezing, smelling of mold and wet soil. And there it was again, me, standing in the other hallway, grinning. But this time, it wasn't tapping. It was crawling through. Its hands gripped the wooden frame, nails black and splintered. Its body jerked like a puppet as it pulled itself forward. I screamed, but no sound came out. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my keys or opening the door or sprinting barefoot into the night. I just remember the sound behind me, claws dragging along the floor, something shrieking in a voice that was almost, but not quite, my own. I never went back. The house still sits there, windows dark, waiting. Sometimes, though, when I close my eyes, I hear it tap, 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 and I wonder if I ever really escaped at all. When I inherited my grandmother's house, I thought it was a blessing. It was old, sure, but it was mine, and after years of scraping by in cramped apartments, the thought of an entire house felt like freedom. The house itself wasn't much to look at. 2 stories, sagging porch, paint peeling in long strips like dry skin. But inside, it had character. Floral wallpaper from the 50s, heavy wooden doors, and that faint smell of mothballs and lavender my grandmother had always loved. I spent the first night unpacking, wandering from room to room, feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and unease. The house creaked constantly, its timbers moaning like tired lungs. It wasn't the kind of sound you could ignore, but there was one door I didn't open. At the very end of the upstairs hallway stood a door painted a dull, chip gray. Unlike the others, it had a heavy brass handle instead of a knob. I tried it once, half curious, but it didn't budge. Locked, I thought, and I didn't have the key. I told myself it didn't matter. Old houses had locked rooms all the time. Maybe it was storage, maybe just an old utility closet. Still, that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The silence of the house pressed in on me, broken only by the occasional creak. And just as I began to drift off, I heard it, a knock, soft, deliberate, from the end of the hall. I froze, every nerve in my body awake. Another knock followed, louder this time, echoing down the hallway. My throat went dry. No one else was in the house. I told myself I imagined it. Stress, fatigue. Houses made noises, didn't they? But deep down, I knew that was no ordinary sound. The next day, I searched for the key. I tore through drawers, boxes, cupboards, nothing. The gray door remained sealed, indifferent to my efforts. That night, the knocking returned. 3 times, slow and heavy, like someone waiting to be let out. I didn't sleep at all. By the 4th night, I had stopped pretending. Something was behind that door. I pressed my ear against the wood, my pulse hammering. At first, I heard nothing. Then, faintly breathing, slow, ragged, like lungs full of dust. I staggered back, nearly tripping over my own feet. The next morning, I called a locksmith. He came, cheerful and oblivious, whistling as he set up his tools. But when he placed his hand on the brass handle, his smile faltered. His eyes flicked to mine. "This door's not right," he muttered. "What do you mean?" I asked. He didn't answer, just shook his head and began working. But after a few minutes, he stood up, pale and sweating. "Sorry," he said quickly. "Can't help you." And then he left. I didn't try anyone else. That night, I woke to the sound of the handle turning, slowly, deliberately, back and forth, though the door never opened. My body shook with terror as I lay there, covers pulled to my chin, praying for dawn. By the 7th night, the knocking wasn't just at the door anymore. I heard it along the hallway walls, in the floorboard beneath my bed, even in the ceiling above me. Always slow, always deliberate, like it knew I could hear and wanted me to know it was closer. I snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. Grabbing a hammer from the basement, I stormed upstairs, my hands trembling, but my mind made up. I raised the hammer and swung it against the gray door. Once, twice. On the 3rd strike, the wood splintered and the door creaked open. The smell hit me first. Rot, mildew, and something sweetly rancid. The room inside was dark, the walls blackened with mold, and in the far corner, crouched low, was a figure. At first, I thought it was a trick of the shadows, but then it moved, slowly unfolding, its limbs too long, its body bent at impossible angles. Its head turned toward me, and in the faint light, I saw its face, sunken eyes, a slack mouth filled with rows of jagged teeth. It smiled. I dropped the hammer. My legs nearly gave out as I stumbled backward. The figure whispered my name, not aloud, but inside my skull, vibrating through my bones. And then it stepped forward. I ran. I didn't grab anything, didn't shut the door. I sprinted out of that house barefoot, heart clawing at my chest, and I never went back. But sometimes in the dead of night, I hear it still, the knock, not from the house anymore, but from somewhere nearer. Sometimes I wake up to hear it at my own bedroom wall, slow and patient, waiting. When I bought the house, I told myself I'd never go into the basement, not because it was haunted or because I believed in that kind of thing. I just hated basements. The smell, the damp, the way the light never seemed to reach the corners. I figured I could live my whole life without ever needing to step foot down there. For the first few months, I managed just fine. The upstairs was more than enough space, and I told myself the basement could stay sealed off, a forgotten part of the house. But one night, the power went out. I lit a candle, checked the fuse box in the hallway. Nothing. That's when I remembered the realtor mentioning the main breaker was in the basement. My stomach twisted, but I had no choice. The basement door groaned as I opened it. Cold air rolled up from below, smelling of mold and something metallic. I clutched the candle and descended. The basement was larger than I expected, stretching farther than the footprint of the house. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. In the far corner, I saw the breaker box. I hurried toward it, eager to flip the switch and leave. That's when I noticed a mirror. It leaned against the wall near the breaker, a tall, ornate thing in a tarnished silver frame. Dust coated its surface, but even through the grime, I could see my reflection. My candlelight flickered across the glass, making my face ripple. I don't know why I felt compelled to clean it. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe something else. I wiped the dust away with my sleeve, revealing a clearer image, and that's when I froze. The reflection wasn't me. Not exactly. It looked like me, yes, same face, same clothes, but the eyes were wrong. They were too wide, too dark, and they didn't blink when I did. My reflection smiled, slow and deliberate, while my own lips stayed still. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the candle. The reflection tilted its head, watching me, its smile stretching wider until it split the skin at the corners of its mouth. Then it raised a hand. Mine stayed at my side. It tapped the inside of the glass. Once, twice, a hollow, echoing sound. I ran. I didn't even touch the breaker. I bolted up the stairs, slammed the door, and pressed my back against it, my chest heaving. The lights came back on a moment later, as if nothing had happened. I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion or a trick of the light, but every night after that, I dreamed of the mirror. In my dreams, I stood in front of it, unable to look away as my reflection grew stranger, its skin peeling, its body twitching, its smile never fading. One night, I woke to the sound of glass cracking. I crept to the basement door, every nerve screaming not to open it. But I did. The sound was louder now, sharp and splintering, like a spiderweb of fractures spreading through glass. And beneath it, faintly a voice. My voice. Let me out. I slammed the door and locked it. I haven't gone down since. But the mirror hasn't stopped calling. Sometimes, when the house is quiet, I hear the tap, tap, tap from below, steady and patient. And sometimes when I pass a mirror upstairs, I catch a glimpse of something behind me, something smiling with my face. Waiting for the day I finally looked too long. I'd been renting the house for 3 weeks before I noticed the door. It wasn't hidden, exactly, just overlooked. A square wooden hatch built flush into the floor of the living room, its edges lined with rusted iron hinges. The previous tenant must have covered it with a rug, because I only found it after pulling the carpet up to clean. At first, I laughed. It felt almost cliché, like something out of a horror movie. A trapdoor in the middle of the room, but curiosity gnawed at me. I knelt, ran my hand over the wood, felt the faint draft seeping up through the cracks. I told myself it was probably storage. Old houses had weird features like that, so I pried it open. The smell hit me first, stale, earthy, damp, like a cellar sealed off for decades. I held my phone over the opening. its flashlight cutting into the darkness below. A narrow staircase disappeared into black. I should have closed it right then, but I didn't. I went down. The steps groaned beneath my weight, dust rising with each movement. At the bottom was a small stone chamber, maybe 10 feet by 10. The walls were damp, the air colder than upstairs, and in the center of the room stood a chair. Not just any chair, a high-backed wooden thing, worn and splintered, with leather straps bolted to the arms and legs. My chest tightened. This wasn't storage. I turned to leave, but something stopped me. A sound, faint, almost imperceptible, like breathing, slow, steady, coming from the shadows in the corner. I raised my phone again. The light quivered in my shaking hand. And then I saw it, a figure crouched in the corner, pale skin stretched too thin over its bones, hair hanging in clumps around its face. Its eyes caught the light, glowing faintly like an animal's. It smiled. I bolted up the stairs, slamming the hatch shut above me. My heart thrashed against my ribs as I shoved the rug back over the door, as if that flimsy cover could erase what I'd seen. That night, I dreamed of the chair. I dreamed I was strapped into it, leather biting into my wrists, as the pale figure leaned close, whispering words I couldn't understand. When I woke, the rug was pushed aside. The hatch stood open. I swore I'd leave the house the next day, but something inside me hesitated, like the house itself was rooting into me, whispering that I couldn't go yet. The second night, I woke to the sound of footsteps above me, not on the ceiling, on the floor, slow, deliberate, circling the hatch. The third night, I woke to find the hatch open again, and on the fourth, I woke strapped to the chair. I don't remember how I got there. I don't remember walking down the stairs, or sitting down, or the straps tightening around me. But when I opened my eyes, I was in the stone chamber, leather biting into my wrists, my legs pinned. The pale figure stood over me, its head cocked, its grin wide and wet. It leaned close, its breath sour and cold. "You opened the door," it whispered in a voice that was almost mine. "Now you belong here." I screamed until my throat tore, but no one heard. And if you ever rent that house, if you ever pull back the rug and find a hatch in the floor, don't open it. Don't go down there, because if you do, you'll never really come back up. Some houses hide more than secrets. Some should have been left empty, their doors sealed forever. But we open them and we listen to the whispers inside. Now tell me, would you dare step into a house that calls your name in the dark? If you enjoyed these terrifying tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because there are many more horrors waiting for you, and they're closer than you think.